So performance therapy originates from the Altus community, and what was initially described as table to track or trackside therapy, what my goal has become over the last few years has been, how do we take the origins of trackside therapy that Altus has developed and really infuse this into the team sport setting? And that is the role that Chris and I not only play for Combine, but just in general, the role that we work under. And this was the first and the most impactful evidence that I have to date, for sure, of how truly effective this model really is. And let me preface here by saying, like, we're like 2 weeks away from finishing up pro days, and as soon as this pro day process ends, the first thing that we're all going to do is sit down and rip everything apart and do our audit objective review and everything. But nevertheless, we are able to say that from January through the end of February, through the Combine period, this was very, very effective. The way that this looks in the Combine setting is it's kind of delivered in bits and pieces throughout the course of the day and throughout the course of the week. So the operational heuristic that we work under here is that we are the spotters for the snipers. So the speed and the strength teams are writing the primary plans and putting in, the primary components of programming. And our job then becomes to identify risk for the individuals within the group and then generate the plan or the strategy to help mitigate or minimize that risk while trying to keep them as close to that target plan as possible. So Chris and I are interchangeable. We're able to do mostly the exact same things, apply the same quality of work, but we each have our own specialties within this performance therapy umbrella. So between Chris and I, my primary role is table outward, and then Chris's primary role is turf inward. So in other words, I'm kind of the lead on the manual therapy, the soft tissue side, some of the positional isometrics, the testing, manual muscle stuff. Chris's primary role is the speed regressions and the modified speed planning, so return to run very broadly, for athletes who were either dealing with some kind of limitation or coming off of some type of injury. What we did on a day-to-day started first thing in the morning with data oversight and collection. So looking through daily wellness submissions, checking each athlete's workload, looking through the force plate metrics, and then kind of just, through conversation, keeping a good pulse on where every athlete is throughout the process. Then we would go down to the field. During pre-session, we're kind of the first frontline people, some table checks, going through some different range of motion stuff, some different soft tissue things, kind of just a very detailed and precise warm-up or prep process. Then when we transition into the session on field, this is where Chris kind of leaves the table and starts to work more on the field. And for the most cases, he was overseeing the athletes that we had designated as being either yellow or orange. So every athlete at any point throughout the entire process had a color designation. Green, clear, good to go, no problems. Yellow, couple of things going on, so we're just going to kind of monitor a little bit more closely. Orange is where we actually had modifications put in place. So whatever the plan was for the day, we were going to modify down to meet the athlete where they're at. And then red is full intervention, and kind of they're going to be off to the side. So Chris really owned that space of the yellow and orange group, staying as closely aligned to the plan that Les had put in place. Chris was going to write a modified plan for those athletes. And then in the cases that we did have athletes that were red, they were basically going to be off to the side with me and going through whatever needed to be done at that time. Once we finished the speed session, then we transition into the weight room for strength. And then this is where I come in and do the same thing for the strength programming as Chris does for the speed programming. So taking the plan that Dusty had written and then going through one by one, these athletes, we're going to modify this, we're going to put this in place of that. And again, the whole premise of this is to try to drive the individualization within the team setting. With 30 athletes, there's never going to be uniformity. We're never going to have everybody at the same level, at the same place, at the same health status. So instead of it just being this, kind of compromise of like, okay, well, they're good enough, so we're just going to push them through the session, and then, if it becomes too much, we'll pull them out, or, pulling them out entirely and just not letting them do anything in fear of anything happening. I think it's a really, really important thing with this combine stuff that we have the absolute most out of each day as possible. From start to finish, we're going to have right around 50 to 60 days to get this thing done. So every single day is going to be very important in terms of what we're getting out of each athlete for each day. So I think collectively from the performance therapy side, what we were able to provide was better precision, better accuracy, and then just a more specific application for each individual athlete within this group setting. And I'm excited to kind of share, some of the data and some of the outcomes of this as we go throughout this year. But we've got a really good body of evidence to show that this was a meaningful thing.